This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A French court finds accomplices to Charlie Hebdo attackers guilty of terrorism-related charges. Negotiators in Nigeria begin a delicate attempt to bring more than 300 kidnapped boys home. And the United Nations asks African countries to include refugees in COVID-19 vaccine allocation and distribution plans. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. I'm Hannah Viviers. Let's take a look at what else is making headlines this hour. In business news, Nigeria predicts recession exit in first quarter of 2021. And rising coffee consumption in China attracts international investments. Well, let's begin in France, where a local court has found 14 suspects behind the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attacks guilty. Among the 14 was Hayat Boumediene, a former partner of Amedy Coulibaly, who killed a policewoman and later 4 people in a Jewish supermarket. He was an associate of the gunman behind the deadly attack at the Paris offices of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in January of 2015. One of 3 suspects to be tried in absentia, Hayat Boumediene was found guilty of financing terrorism and belonging to a criminal terrorist network. She's thought to be alive and on the run from an international arrest warrant in Syria, where she joined Islamic State. Well, CGTN's Ross Cullen is now joining us from Paris with more on this story. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us more about this guilty verdict and how it was reached.
Well, hi, Hannah. You're right. All 14 defendants found guilty. Only 11 were present in the courts. As you say, 3 of them were tried in absentia, one believed to be on the run in Iraq and Syria, the 2 others believed to be dead. But of the 11 who were present, all found guilty, and including the key suspect in this case, Ali Riza Polat. He was cleared of terror charges but found guilty of aiding and abetting murder, and he was given a 30-year prison sentence by the authorities today. Sentences for the defendants found guilty ranging from 5 to 8 years up to 10 years and 20 years, with 30-year jail sentence there for Ali Riza Polat. And this all relates to the January 2015 attacks, as you say, on the Charlie Hebdo newspaper here in Paris and also on a kosher supermarket. What happened was the 2 brothers, Sherif and Said Kouachi, on the 7th of January 2015 approached the offices of Charlie Hebdo and forced one of the employees who was downstairs, forced her at gunpoint to enter the security code so they can access the building. Then they forced her to take them up to the meeting room where the editorial morning meeting was going on, and they shot dead 12 people inside the offices before going on the run. They later died in a shootout with police. Then 2 days later, we had the attack on a kosher supermarket. Ahmed Coulibaly, who you mentioned in the intro there, Hannah, his former partner found guilty of 30 years. She's the one who's believed to be on the run somewhere in Iraq or Syria. Ahmed Coulibaly at the kosher supermarket, taking hostages, killing a police officer and 4 other people as well. And the key suspect in today's trial, Ali Riza Polat, he was found guilty of knowing about the attack by Ahmedi Coulibaly in advance. So this trial has come to an end now after 3 months of hearings with guilty verdicts for all 14 defendants.
Ross, how significant is this court decision in France's fight against terrorism?
Well, Hannah, 2015 really marked the start of what have been, unfortunately, 5 years of terror attacks in France. More than 250 people have died in incidents related to terror here in France, not just in the Charlie Hebdo attacks, but remember then in November of that year, 2015, 130 people lost their lives in coordinated bombing and shooting attacks here in Paris, in cafes and bars and the Bataclan Theatre. Also failed suicide bombings that day at the Stade de France, the national stadium. July 2016 saw more than 80 people killed as a man commandeered a truck and drove it through crowds in Nice. who are gathering in the French southern city to celebrate the 14th of July, France's national day, Bastille Day. And we've seen even terror incidents this year with, in mid-October, Samuel Paty, a 47-year-old history and geography teacher who was decapitated outside the school where he taught after he had recently shown pupils cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Emmanuel Macron has come out saying that we must stand strong, we must stand behind France's freedom of expression, the freedom to draw cartoons, the freedom to blaspheme as well. And also there's been continued efforts by France abroad. In West Africa, we've seen in the southern Sahara region, in the Sahel region, particularly focused on Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali and Niger, thousands of French troops, French fighter jets, French helicopters as part of a military operation trying to stamp out what France sees as radical ideology prevalent in those armed groups in that area of West Africa, trying to stamp out that ideology before it can reach the shores of Europe.
Ross, thank you so much for that detailed report. Russ Cullen joining us live from Paris. Well, Nigerian negotiators are working on a strategy for the release of over 300 schoolboys kidnapped by Boko Haram. This comes as government forces clash with gunmen who took the children hostage. Meanwhile, parents of the abducted boys are eagerly waiting for their safe return.
On Saturday, Nigerian forces backed by police launched a rescue mission. This came after security agencies located the gunmen's hideout in the Zango Paula forest in Katsina State. Nothing much came out of the mission. It was after this that the government agencies engaged diplomacy as a parallel approach to secure the release of over 300 boys who were abducted on Friday. The gunmen, who were armed with AK-47 rifles during the attack on government science school, are said to belong to a militia group called Bakura. But as this got underway, parents of the victims are hoping for the best as a dark cloud hangs over their lives.
We have shed so much tears. Our hearts are grieving and we don't even know what to do. We have gotten tired of talking. We are appealing to the government to help us. Governor Masawi to help. Allah to help us secure our children from the hands of these people.
I have 3 children in this school. The eldest managed to scale the fence and escaped. He used the mobile phone of a resident of the town and called me on my phone, telling me that there was trouble in the school and narrated to me what had happened the previous night and that he had not seen any of his younger siblings.
Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shekau has claimed that he ordered the mission, but locals are discrediting him, claiming that his statement is opportunistic and unfortunate.
Honestly, I don't trust the claim of Boko Haram. It is a lie because Shekau is used to making such lies just to confuse people. I don't trust that, and the situation is not what he said it is.
It was said Shekau ordered the abduction of the children. We don't know the hidden. Only God knows the truth. All the information we have is that there was an armed robbery in the school. Every time I came to visit my child, he would tell me armed robbers would come by the school but had never entered.
For Nigeria, the incident brings back sad memories of the January 2016 Chibok girls' kidnappings by Boko Haram. Only that this time round, the number of victims is slightly higher, the gender different, with the possible identity of the group yet to be established. Mahemutwa, CGTN.
Let's now cross over to Sadiq Bindawa, a reporter at Katsina Post, for more on this story. Thank you so much for joining us, Sadiq. Tell us more on these negotiations. Also, what do we know about the safety of the kidnapped boys?
Thank you very much. Well, the details of the negotiation with the government is still shaggy to the public. The governor of Katsina said revealed to reporters that the kidnappers had made contact and discussions were already on pertaining to the safety and return of the kidnapped school children. The authorities have never revealed full details of the negotiation, possibly for security reasons, and they never revealed if the government have demanded ransom or any ransom will be paid in order to secure the release of the schoolboys. On the issue of the safety, actually the safety of the kidnapped boys is a thing of concern to everyone, especially to their parents and the government in particular. Although it is difficult to now understand the situation they are right now, whatever or wherever they might be, we believe they are not in any way safer. They must have been exposed to harsh weather without enough food or shelter, and possibly poor hygiene that would, in some instances, if care is not taken, might affect their mental health. One of the boys who luckily escaped in the morning told reporters how they trekked from night until morning. He said some of the students trekked without wearing a slippers. So clearly there is an indication that those schoolboys are not safe anymore.
Thank you so much for that, Sadiq Bendawa, a reporter at Katsina Post. Well, let's now head over to Mozambique, where President Filipe Nyusi is vowing to defeat an Islamist insurgency that has taken over parts of Cabo Delgado province. Speaking in Maputo on Wednesday, the president said that his government had received offers of military support in battling the group from many quarters across the world.
The members of the Security Council underlined the importance of credible and effective Libyan-led ceasefire monitoring mechanisms and look forward to a comprehensive report by the Secretary General on the proposal for effective ceasefire monitoring under the auspices of the United Nations. The members of the Security Council called for the withdrawal of all foreign fighters and mercenaries from Libya, in line with the ceasefire agreement reached by the Libyan parties on 23rd of October 2020. The commitments of the participants of the Berlin Conference and the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. And lastly, the members of the Security Council reaffirmed their commitment to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity and national unity of Libya.
Well, the United Nations Security Council has called upon all foreign fighters and mercenaries to leave Libya. The Council's President, Ambassador Jerry Magila, addressed the media from New York on Tuesday. In that address, he said a successful political process was necessary for Libya's peace and stability. Back in October, Libya's warring factions, the Government for National Unity and Libya's National Army, had signed a ceasefire agreement. Well, meanwhile, Chief of the UN's mission in South Sudan, David Shearer, has acknowledged political gains in the country despite COVID-19. He's, however, noted that the peace agreement implementation has stagnated since it was signed in October of this year. He's urging parties to pursue the peace process the Sudanese people deserve.
We urge the parties to take concrete steps to breathe fresh air into the process, above all, to compromise to achieve the peace dividends that their citizens deserve. Our integrated military and civilian teams are in place right now to deter violence and support reconciliation so communities can reach an agreement to peacefully coexist. We know that our presence has markedly de-escalated conflict, particularly where we can make contact with parties early. The South Sudan's government's refusal to enable the mission to access many areas during the year has hampered this work considerably. While those restrictions have eased over the past weeks, we will continue to monitor and report progress to you.
The United Nations is asking African countries to ensure refugees and migrants are included in their vaccine allocation and distribution plan. The UN Refugee Agency says there is no clear scheme in place as to how the vaccines will reach some of the world's most vulnerable people. Our reporter Koleto Wanjohi spoke to Cosmas Chanda, the representative of UNHCR to the African Union and the United Nations.
African countries want more than 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines when they become available. The plan is to immunize at least 60% of the population. But the UN Refugee Agency is concerned this may not have factored in refugees and internally displaced people.
As UNHCR, we are not going to run a parallel vaccination system for refugees or IDPs. And as you know, the primary responsibility to protect and care for refugees is that of the state on whose territory refugees find themselves. So we'll continue to encourage member states, please make sure that refugees are also included in your procurement, distribution of vaccination plans.
According to UNHCR, Africa hosts around 26% of the world's refugee population. The World Health Organization says a vaccine assessment report shows that African countries still have a lot of work to do. It is claimed they still need to do more, from planning and coordination to vaccine regulation, safety and surveillance. 3 vaccines globally have so far shown high efficacy, but 2 of them require specialist storage. Moderna at -20 degrees, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine even colder at -60 to -90 degrees Celsius.
If you look at where refugees are found, quite remote areas, and how can we take a vaccine there and have it stored at -70 degrees Celsius? So there's that challenge. There are other vaccines we understand may not require such deep refrigeration. Probably that is what we may call for. But for UNHCR, our appeal to member states is, please, in your procurement, in the distribution plan, make sure that the requirements of refugees and IDPs are also captured.
The Africa CDC says the continent must be flexible enough to distribute different vaccines to different regions, depending on their ability to meet storage requirements. Through a global WHO-led initiative called COVAX, African countries will acquire vaccines that will immunize 20% of the population. But improved planning and millions more doses are needed to help keep some of the world's most vulnerable people safe. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Time now for us to take a short break. When we return, we take a look at how the coronavirus pandemic is disrupting the tourism industry this festive season.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Ardmore, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, Egypt's health ministry says the country has officially entered the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The nation is expecting the peak of infections to be reached by the end of January. Meanwhile, Egypt is preparing to begin inoculating people after it received its first batch of vaccines from China's Sinopharm. Adela Marouchi has more.
So far, Egypt has registered more than 122,000 COVID-19 cases. Since March, 105,000 patients have been cured. And by mid-December, the country has reported 511 new daily COVID-19 cases, the highest in over 4 months. Days after receiving a first batch of 50,000 Chinese Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines, Cairo is launching an online platform for Egyptians interested in taking the vaccines to register for free.
We are the first African nation to participate in the human clinical trials and the first African nation to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Together we can successfully pass through this, especially with the collaboration between the people of the world.
As the country officially enters the second wave of the pandemic, priority to get the vaccine will be given to medical staff. The health ministry, though, says that so far the second wave is witnessing much less severe symptoms of the disease. It is, however, feared that infections will pick up. Officials say the peak is expected by the end of January. The WHO says Egypt's registered coronavirus cases do not reflect actual figures, while the US CDC has assessed Egypt as being at level 4, which poses the highest infection risk.
In our country, we don't go for community surveys. We don't go for mass testing in the community. We have a different method where only the people who sought the medical care at the Ministry of Health hospitals, they are recorded. So the Ministry of Health reflects in a very good way the number of cases in the community. But if there are people who are getting a mild disease or a moderate one, and they prefer to be treated at home in the private sector, they didn't go for the PCR testing. So we will have a number that is unidentified for people who got the disease in the community and are cured.
Meanwhile, Egypt's government-owned vaccination arm, Vaxera, is preparing a production line to begin introducing locally produced COVID-19 vaccines. That is in collaboration with the UNE and China to add another hub for manufacturing Sinopharm's vaccine. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Owners of Airbnb facilities in Uganda could cash in during the festive season. This as families and travelers look for cheaper and quieter places to get away. Such facilities are now picking up the pieces after an extremely challenging period due to the pandemic. Leon Sayanga reports.
Welcome to David's Chic 2-bedroom apartment. Let me show you around.
Deborah Asikate is an Airbnb host in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Her 2-bedroom unit rents for $50 a night, and it was usually fully booked in the past. She believes it's her prime location that is most attractive to guests.
Majority of the guests are working people who come to do some work in Kampala, and they need a comfortable place to stay where they can have internet, they can access the city easily, and it is safe. And so that's the majority of the travelers. Holiday makers, maybe about 20-30%.
But the COVID-19 pandemic forced her to shut the door for a while. Suspension of travel into Uganda in March meant there were no short-stay travelers in need of a place to sleep.
Occupancy was at about 90% of the time, so it was really doing very well. And then COVID hit, and then the occupancy went to 0, and now it's at around less than 5%.
Uganda has more than 100 Airbnb hosts across the country. For many, it's an extra source of income. But with the demand for more cost-effective accommodation now on the rise, many more apartments are expected to list, and that is increasing the competition with traditional hotels. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, Uganda has over 6,000 registered accommodation facilities. While some are slowly getting back to business, new accommodation platforms like Airbnb are keeping hoteliers worried.
We are going to have to be forced to look at many different ways because everybody now chooses to go Airbnb. When you want to travel abroad, you're looking at Airbnb. It's cheaper, it's many times even safer, and it also offers you more than just feeling a guest. You become part of the community, which is more bang for your buck.
And for the short stay facilities, there is hope of recovery with the festive season knocking.
It will certainly get better with a number of people traveling more, but also a number of people within the city as well wanting to. I've had a few families come and stay for the weekend, a wife, husband and their child. They just come and stay here for 2 or 3 nights, and they're like, we just needed to unwind away from home.
December is likely to be a good month for Deborah. She is already tidying up for the next guests, whom she says will be staying well into the next year. Leon Sayanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
South Africa's tourism industry has been dealt yet another blow. This as the country tries to contain a second wave of coronavirus infections. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced new measures which include beach closures, a stricter curfew, and reduced trading hours for liquor stores, restaurants, and bars. The country has recorded between 6,000 and 8,000 new infections over the last week and a steadily rising death toll. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Tighter COVID-19 restrictions over the festive season have dashed recovery hopes for South Africa's tourism industry as the country battles a second wave of infections. Closures of beaches in the main hotspots may see holiday plans cancelled and bring more pain for the industry.
It does have a big impact because those are the popular holiday destinations. If you talk about KZN, you talk about PE, East London, the Garden Route. Those are the popular places for tourists. People are not going to go to the coastal areas if the beaches are going to be closed.
The sector is estimated to have lost $70 million during the lockdown. Longer curfew, restrictions on mass gatherings and shorter trading hours for restaurants and bars will cause further setbacks.
It's going to be a difficult road ahead, and we do recognize that it's going to be tough. A lot more people may lose their jobs. A lot more businesses may close, but we do hope that whatever we're doing now gets us to a level of sort of sustainability in terms of the bottom line.
Long-haul travel will do little to offset losses, but has been allowed to continue. At this bustling taxi rank in Johannesburg, many are heading home.
The last time I went home, it was last year, December, before the pandemic. So now, since the corona, I never go back home. So I was this side in Gauteng. So now in this December, we are in level 1. I have to go home. I miss my parents, my niece, my nephew, all my family. But I do have the fear, but I do follow the orders of sanitizer and mask and wearing mask all the time.
I'm so scared of corona because since people are dying and the president said we must wear masks and there's no social distancing, so it's really, really scary for me, the illness, I heard about it, how it affects people. So I'm really scared.
Drivers here say on some routes there are marked differences from previous years.
So we're waiting for people, there is no people. So maybe this virus is making things up and down. We are not busy, as already we know December is busy time, but now it's not busy. People are scared for virus.
It's going to be a bleak festive season, but South Africans have to be vigilant or the new year could bring disastrous consequences for the population and the economy. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's stay in South Africa, where rising sea levels are threatening the future of Cape Town's tourist attractions, including the world-famous Robben Island. It is feared that many of the city's beaches could disappear. That's according to new research, which shows that rising sea levels and coastal erosion could negatively affect tourism. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports.
With a coastline that spans over 300 kilometers, Cape Town is famed for its white sandy beaches and turquoise waters that attract many local and international tourists. The city's beaches, though, are at risk of disappearing due to rising sea levels and coastal erosion. A study conducted by researchers at the Vaal University of Technology and the University of South Africa found that many of the mother city's beaches face a severe threat.
We found that at least about 80% of the blue flag beaches that are popular and also accredited to the blue flag program are under threat from rising sea level as a consequence of coastal erosion.
Cape Town boasts 10 blue flag beaches, which are accredited after meeting stringent environmental, safety and accessibility criteria. However, the aptly named Broken Road has already shown just how destructive coastal erosion can be on beaches and coastal tourism facilities.
Tourism industry is also resilient, but we anticipate that the costs might be dire and severe, particularly for the tourism business, especially from if one looks at the damage that can be caused by rising sea level on coastal tourism facilities.
Some sea defense barriers, though, have been put in place to mitigate storms and elevating sea levels, including concrete dollos that can weigh up to 80 tons. Broken Road has become a vivid reminder of rising sea levels along the Cape Coast, but it's just one example of many other situations that is already taking effect. Bonwabisi Beach and Gordons Bay are also showing visible signs of erosion, and it points to serious interventions that are needed to preserve Cape Town's blue economy.
Given the significance and the magnitude of the situation, the city might not be able to do it alone. So there's need for government to come in and play a significant role in order to assist the coastal cities to really adapt and also mitigate the impact that can actually come from the extreme weather events, particularly in coastal communities.
For now, the study has shown that the erosion at blue flag beaches is a fairly significant environmental issue, but solutions must be found to address the rising sea levels. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, let's now recap on top stories we've been following. A French court has found 14 suspects behind the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attacks guilty. Among the 14 was Hayat Boumediene, former partner of Amedi Coulibaly, who killed a policewoman and later 4 people in a Jewish supermarket. He was an associate of the gunman behind the deadly attack at the Paris offices of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in January of 2015. One of 3 suspects to be tried in absentia, Hayat Boumediene, was found guilty of financing terrorism and belonging to a criminal terrorist network. She's thought to be alive and on the run from an international arrest warrant in Syria. Negotiators in Nigeria are working on a strategy for the release of over 300 schoolboys kidnapped in Katsina State. Boko Haram has claimed responsibility for the attack. This comes as government forces clash with gunmen who took the children hostage on Friday. Parents of the abducted boys are eagerly waiting for their safe return. Well, the United Nations is asking African countries to ensure refugees and migrants are included in their vaccine allocation and distribution plans. The UN Refugee Agency says there is no clear scheme in place as to how the vaccines will reach some of the world's most vulnerable people. African countries want more than 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines when they become available. The plan is to immunize at least 60% of the population. Those were the stories making headlines this hour. Let's now take a look at what's coming up in business. Nigeria predicts recession exit in Q1 of 2021. And rising coffee consumption in China attracts international investments.
He is credited with transforming banking in Kenya from an exclusive service to an accessible and essential service. He says he has the formula and tools to avail financial services to all parts of the African continent.
We have learned the lessons. We know what works. We have the capability to leapfrog on technology.
Tens of awards later, he keeps his eyes on the prize.
We are doing things with an objective that is people-centered.
He built Equity Group from an unknown building society in the 80s to one of Africa's top banks with assets in excess of $8 billion. He's also giving thousands of students the wings to fly.
Education is the only way for all our children.
We speak to Dr. James Mwangi, the man at the helm of the Equity Group. How far can he replicate his success?
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for the business news. Nigeria is currently in its second economic recession in 4 years, but authorities believe this will be short-lived. But the country's finance minister and governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria have projected that the country could exit recession by the first quarter of 2021 and forecasted a positive GDP growth in 2021. Here is CGTN's Deji Badmos with more on that story.
Nigeria's second quarter contraction, which caused the economy to slip into recession, was widely expected, but at just minus 3.62%, the scale of the contraction was quite surprising. Many had projected a much steeper contraction, but the country's fiscal and monetary authorities say the lower than expected decline is largely a result of the huge funding interventions they made to cushion the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on households and businesses.
With sustained implementation of our intervention measures, we do expect that the Nigerian economy could emerge from the recession by the first quarter of 2021. We also expect that growth in 2021 will attain 2.0%. However, downside risks remain, as restoration of full economic activities, particularly in service-related sectors, remain uncertain until a COVID vaccine is produced and made available to millions of people across the world.
The Nigerian government rolled out its economic sustainability plan back in June this year to tackle the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. The plan provides for a $5 billion stimulus package targeted at job creation, households and businesses. The central bank has so far been an important driver of the initiative, providing unprecedented funding support to various sectors of the economy.
We have seen that this has been quite impactful, particularly the targeted credit facility, which is meant for household and SMEs, because what we saw during this period is that it has helped to boost consumption spending for our SMEs. And if you know or recall that consumption constitutes over almost 70% of output, you will know that this has been very, very impactful in moderating the impact of the COVID-19 on productivity and output and GDP in our country.
The government is still coming up with more initiative and literally putting more money in the hands of the people with the hope of turning things around for the economy.
So I think the steps are the things are in the right direction, but these policies need to be complemented with other policies, just as the CGTN governor said. We need to complement it with the fiscal policies. We need to address the issue of the structural issues. We need to address the issue at the ports. We also need to address the issue of logistics and all of that. So there has to be complementary policies on the fiscal side to support what is happening on the monetary side. And just as I said, we need to address the issue of the foreign exchange market.
One other good thing for Nigeria is that oil prices are gradually picking up, and that could help shore up the country's reserve and keep its currency stable. And with COVID-19 vaccine now being approved for use, some bit of normalcy may begin to return to the global economy. That, of course, would further boost the local economy here and possibly get the country off the recession as quickly as officials are predicting. Ardmore, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Earnings for Tanzania's cashew nut growers are expected to fall this year due to crop diseases and the effects of climate change. Reports from the country's cashew nut board show that nut production will be short of the target by over 20% this year following a drop in yields. Earlier projections had targeted production of at least 278,000 tons for the 2020-2021 harvest season. But board officials say this may not be reached. CGTN's Daniel Kidjo has more.
Cashew nuts are one of Tanzania's key cash crops, and the country is among the top traditional cashew nut producing countries in the world. About 250,000 farmers in Lindi, Mtwara, Ruvuma, and Coast region depend on cashew nut farming for their livelihood. But crop diseases and weather changes in plantations in Tanzania's cashew production areas have affected output over the last few years. The Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania reports show in 2018, Tanzania earned about $575 million for exporting about 313,000 tons of cashew, before declining to 225,000 tons in the next season, 2018-2019. Prior to the start of the 2020-2021 season, the government had forecast that its production would rise. However, revised projections show that the country's production in the coming season will be short of the target by 55,000 tons, going down 20%. With the new projections, cashew nut production is expected to be less by over 10,000 tons compared to the previous season's volumes. So far, the country has produced cashew nuts worth around $163.8 million, sold by 6 cooperative units in the 4 major growing regions of Mtwara, Lindi, Ruvuma, and the Coast region. About 90% of the country's raw cashew nut is exported to India, with a small portion, which is less than 10%, is processed internally. However, the government has established a special fund to enable farmers to acquire inputs and also to increase the number of cashew nut extension officers in order to revive the sector. It is also moving to attract global buyers by trading online via the Tanzania Mercantile Exchange System. Daniel Kidjo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
China's coffee consumption market is definitely huge. Mintel research shows that its consumption volume stood at around 100 billion yuan in 2019. And there's lots of optimism ahead as the popularity of coffee grows among more and more consumers. The potential is attracting international coffee chains to accelerate their investments in China. A domestic coffee supply chain giant has also decided to join the battle for the retail market. Let's take a closer look.
Much of the optimism about China's coffee market potential stems from how little domestic consumers drink. Just 5.4 cups per capita last year, compared to 341 in the United States and 591 in Western Europe. Many young Chinese now jokingly describe coffee as a lifesaver to buffer the pressure and exhaustion from study and work. The per capita consumption in China may seem small, but the growth momentum is remarkable. The International Coffee Organization said that China's coffee consumption has expanded by an average annual rate of 16% over the past decade. Tmall says the online sales numbers are even more impressive.
The whole coffee sales number grows over 80% annually up to now, which is also in line with the robust momentum of the last couple of years. Chinese now can consume 14 billion cups of coffee per year, with instant coffee accounting for 63% of it.
China's coffee market offers a silver lining for pandemic-striking global coffee chain leaders like Starbucks, which closed many stores around the world. Starbucks later seized on the warming of China's outpaced recovery to continue its store opening plan. Canadian coffee brand Tim Hortons recently opened its 100th Chinese store, and McDonald's Cafe has announced plans to invest 2.5 billion yuan in its coffee market in China over the next 3 years. The domestic-grown coffee supply chain giant Malone Gold Coffee provides a whole package service for many companies and luxury hotels. It's also the sole coffee provider for G20 Hangzhou Summit and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Qingdao. The company is already a leader in the 2B business, but says it's ready to join the battle for the retail market.
Coffee acts like a window and communicable language that bridges the gap between young consumers and merchants. As a professional manufacturer of a coffee supply chain with a history of over 25 years, our very special edge is our high-quality products.
And now, the professional coffee provider aims at winning more retail consumers' hearts with its products.
I think we are ready for the B2C market. Actually, we have opened our retail stores both online and offline for many years, where we just did not prioritize the retail business as our focus during that time. Through all these years' service, we gradually grasped the taste and preference of Chinese consumers and have the capacity to produce tailored flavors for them.
Zhu said the company plans to promote its featured product, drip coffee, and occupy this very specific market segment in its early phase of its retail-oriented shift. Gao Songya, CGTN.
European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has offered fresh optimism over Brexit talks and vaccinations as she addressed the European Parliament earlier on today. Although she could not confirm whether there would be a trade deal with the UK, she did say that both parties had found a way forward on one of three sticking points: governance, while issues of fair market competition and fisheries remain. On COVID-19, von der Leyen said the 27-member bloc aimed to start vaccinations on the same day as a sign of unity. This as they await approval from the EU's top drug regulator, which is set to hold vaccine talks next week. Let's now take a short break. More when we return.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's head over to South Africa, where for over 34 years, Ardmore Studios has crafted original ceramics that have provided income to feed many families in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Trained by Ardmore's founder, Faye Halstead, 80 painters and sculptors transform African art into ornamental pieces. Items have been sold by Christie's and Sotheby's. Despite its international success, though, Ardmore has remained true to its roots, trained and developed local artists, as well as caring for a community hit hard by HIV and AIDS. Today, the studio is an institution in South Africa, and continues to shape and change people's lives.
I was angry. I wanted to teach people, and I thought, well, if I can't teach privileged whites, I'm going to help people who don't have opportunity. My name is Faye Halstead. I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I came to study fine arts in South Africa. And I was lecturing. I majored in painting and started working in ceramics, and I was lecturing in Durban, and I lost my job. I was angry. I wanted to teach people, and I thought, well, if I can't teach privileged whites, I'm going to help people who don't have opportunity. And I started working with Bonnie and Chalanchali, our maid's daughter. It's been a fairy tale story. It's grown now to include about 80 people, and we live here at Caversham in KwaZulu-Natal. I didn't choose to make Ardmore so detailed and intricate. What we did by working with the Zulu culture is they have always created the most exquisite craft. This beautiful, colorful brand of Ardmore, I think what it is that this continent and this country is so rich in so much elegance, sophistication. It is inspiration for artists. Picasso, so many artists have been to Africa to get inspired. It's the rawness of it. And what we've created here for Ardmore is the elegance, the color, the celebration of life. And for me, that is what has been Ardmore's success. Through the years, we've just grown and grown and grown, and we've developed the most amazing work. I don't think there's anything like it in the world. And to see people start at Ardmore, I say, remember this day. They come, they've lost their parents from HIV, many of them have. We got hit hard with HIV, with the artists in 1985 was one of our first artists died, and we worked really hard with them, but in those days nobody wanted to talk about it. So many of my artists, we lost at least 40 wonderful, wonderful artists, including Bonnie. It was very painful to lose these artists at the time, and I took a very positive approach. I made a hospital at the studio, and I kept artists with me close. We nursed them. Now, since 2010, most of the artists are on antiretrovirals, and they've lived very well with being HIV positive, and we haven't lost one artist. My children grew up with Ardmore. My two daughters are very, very creative. They studied fine art, also in Pietermaritzburg University, and my son studied business. When he'd finished school, I said, you know, I can't really leave you much, but we could have fun starting a new business. And why don't we take these fabulous designs off the ceramics and turn them into fabric? And we started that business in about 10 years ago now, and it's been such a fun journey working with the kids, and my daughters are the designers. And in fact, in 2013, we were discovered by Hermès, the French wonderful luxury brand in Paris, and Catherine has designed the most exquisite scarves for them. And then also 2-3 years ago, we were discovered by Cole & Son in New York. Our work was discovered there, and we've produced the most fantastic and one of their most popular selling wallpaper designs that we did with them. And in fact, in 2021, we're going to launch this #2 collection. So that's very, very exciting. I think our worldwide success has come about because we've produced a new visual. It's a bit quirky. It's raw, it's naive, in a beautiful sense of life. This feeling of what we've achieved here, I cannot tell you what it feels like. I lie in bed at night and I go, sure, I've done something good, you know, something in my wildest dreams has happened, but it's come from hard work and dedication. What is my dream is to continue, to just see that once I'm gone, the Ardmore studio and the artists and their children have continuity, and to put steps and measures in place that they become self-reliant on me. So My visual is for me to be able to step back and to watch my teachings come out.
Well, let's now take a look at what's coming up in the world of sport.